Did you guys see this ad coming out from Ontario, Canada? This is Canada's response to what is it that Trump has been saying is beautiful, great, beautiful tariffs that make everything wonderful and great. Trust me, I'm a Reagan conservative.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
What a nice, peaceful ad from Ontario, Canada, using former President Reagan's speech about tariffs and free trade to show just how wrong Donald Trump is. So, when something like that happens, reality rears its ugly head in front of this fascist administration. They start pressing on people, or they get their allies to do it, which they did in this particular case. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, they responded. They said, we've learned that the government of Ontario, Canada created an ad campaign using selective audio and video of President Ronald Reagan delivering his, quote, radio address to the nation on free and fair trade, dated April 25th, 1987. The ad misrepresents the presidential radio address, and the government of Ontario did not seek nor receive permission to use and edit the remarks. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is reviewing its legal options in this matter. We encourage you to watch President Reagan's unedited video on our YouTube channel. I followed that link. The good news is I followed that link to your YouTube channel. The video is like just over 5 minutes long. The parts at the beginning, because I'm not going to run the full 5 minutes, I'll run this section of it. They said unedited because, the ad took parts of what is that he said, that all those things that made sense as far as tariffs and trade goes. And they said they edited it. They wanted to run the whole 5.5 minutes. I have a good idea, you guys. Go to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute page on YouTube like they said to. Listen to the whole thing. And what you'll hear is the only parts that were taken out were the parts about how he's instituting some tariffs on Japan at the time in 1987 because they felt that there was unfair trade practices around things like microchips or something, right? And then in those cases, it's necessary to try and get some kind of pushback. But this was his point right in the middle of it. See if what he said disagrees with what Donald Trump is doing.
For those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group, who forget that more than 5 million American jobs are directly tied to the foreign export business, and additional millions are tied to imports.
I think if you listen to the whole thing, you'll find that even more so, more than that Canadian ad, more so, you'll see from the Reagan Institute that they told you to go and watch disproves Donald Trump even further. But what they don't expect you to do is go and listen for 5.5 minutes because they figure people's attention spans aren't long enough. They figure people will just listen to whatever it is that they and Donald Trump say. They figure enough people don't have enough brain power to think on their own or do their own, not even research, just to watch long enough and listen and pay attention. Everything that old, crusty, horrible president broke down there is true. And guess what else it is? It's 100% what Donald Trump is doing right now. That address that couldn't look more 1987, that is showing exactly what this president is doing. But reality has no place in propaganda. So when reality slaps you in the face, especially a fascist like this, you have to lash out. And in order to try and drown out the reality, to drown out the guy that you said agrees with you on this, in order to do that, you have to scream. Imagine hearing what Ronald Reagan actually said and then reading this. Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, when actually he loved tariffs for our country and its national security. Canada is trying to illegally influence the United States Supreme Court in one of the most important rulings in the history of our country. Canada has long cheated on tariffs, charging our farmers as much as 400%. Now they and other countries can't take advantage of the U.S. any longer. Thank you to the Ronald Reagan Foundation for exposing this fraud. I don't think it could be any clearer that Donald Trump leaned on the Ronald Reagan Foundation. That's why he's thanking them at the end. What that really means is because I told you so, to do what I tell you, because again, he has this fascist authoritarian mindset. And he's like, I'm going to lean on people to be my mouthpieces to try and give me some kind of legitimacy in my lies. Imagine hearing what Ronald Reagan said in 1987 and saying that he agrees with him. Imagine that. But the only way he's gotten this far is because enough people don't pay attention. They don't read anything, and they definitely don't listen long enough. Because as Stephen Bannon pointed out in that last story I just did, this is a cult, and you don't have free thought. You listen to the dear leader. So the propaganda went further. He followed up that because he's like, maybe that's not enough. I don't think enough people will buy it. He followed it by saying this. This is all caps. The United States is wealthy, powerful, and nationally secure again, all because of tariffs. The most important case ever is in the United States Supreme Court. God bless America. In both of those posts, he pointed out that he's very focused on the Supreme Court rulings over these tariff policies. That's what he's concerned with. And I'm not sure how Ontario, Canada can influence this United States Supreme Court, who you handpicked several members of, and to do their bidding. Why would that happen? Oh, I guess he's going to declare war on Canada next and say he's going to start shooting people that end up in some international waters because he's so upset at Ontario for posting a video that quoted Ronald Reagan. It's an overwhelming flow of stupidity.
It's the single biggest problem that we were given. Inflation, I've already taken care of. Economically, the country is the strongest it's ever been. Thank God for tariffs. If we didn't have tariffs, we'd be a third world nation. But thank God for tariffs. We're the richest nation in the world now because of tariffs. And we're able to economically protect ourselves. And we're able to really protect ourselves from a national security situation.
Things are great. America's on the right track. The economy is wonderful. It's flourishing. I've already taken care of everything. It's wonderful. It's awesome. I wonder if he has any, answers to this.
There's a new flashing warning sign about the financial health of the federal government. The U.S. debt, the balance on our collective credit card, has been growing at an astounding rate of nearly $70,000 per second over the past year. That's according to the Joint Economic Committee. It now stands at a colossal $38 trillion.
You guys remember when politicians used to talk about the debt and deficit? Remember they used to talk about how it grows so quick? They used to have like a debt clock. Remember all those things? They're not talking about that anymore. I wonder why they're not talking about that anymore. I wonder why there's no more debt clock running. That what they said? $70,000 a second. I need to look at that graphic again. $70,000 a second. But Donald Trump has it all taken care of. Hey, here's the last rail of their propaganda. Then you got state TV with Kayleigh McEnany, who, if you guys don't remember who she is, she worked in his first administration to be a part of all of this propaganda that didn't really work out that well for them because there was a few people that still actually believed in normal government that were still crazed Republicans, but they wouldn't go so far as the fascism. This is what they want to celebrate. I want you guys to pay attention to this. This is the new normal for the Republicans for the United States of America. See if you appreciate this as much as Kayleigh McEnany does.
Last but not least, one trend and true brand is making a big comeback as consumers tighten their wallets. And here it is, Hamburger Helper. The mix of mac and cheese and ground beef is seeing a surge in sales.
I want you to hear it again and also listen for the woman behind her go, when she talks about Hamburger Helper.
One trend and true brand is making a big comeback as consumers tighten their wallets. And here it is, Hamburger Helper. The mix of mac and cheese and ground beef is seeing a surge in sales.
Hamburger Helper is seeing a surge in sales as Americans tighten their belts and their wallets. Why would Americans have to tighten their belts and wallets even further? For Hamburger Helper, a mix of mac and cheese and ground beef. You know what's even better? Tuna Helper. You know what's better? Some slop. Maybe you know what's even better? Just a mix of flour and water. Because that's all we can afford. When is that golden age for America going to start? You know what? Next month, Kayleigh McEnany is going to be celebrating the resurgence of ramen noodles. She goes, remember that old classic college classic that you used to have back in 1988? Ramen noodles back on the rise. Just mix a little bit of that sodium packet over some cheap ass noodles, and boy, you've got a resurgence. America, yeah.